Luke 18, starting in verse 1. Jesus was telling them a parable about their need to pray continuously and not to be discouraged. He said, in a certain city there was a judge who neither feared God nor respected people. In that city there was a widow who kept coming to him asking, "Give me justice in this case against my adversary." For a while he refused, but finally said to himself, "I don't fear God or respect people, but I will give this widow justice because she keeps bothering me. Otherwise there will be no end to her coming here and embarrassing me." Jesus said, the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. Won't God provide justice for his chosen people who cry out to him day and night? Will he be slow to help them? I tell you, he will give them justice quickly. But when the human one comes, will he find faithfulness on earth? Jesus told this parable to certain people who had convinced themselves that they were righteous and looked on everyone else with disgust. Two people went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee stood and prayed about himself with these words, "God, I thank you that I'm not like other people, crooks, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week. I give a tenth of everything I receive." But the tax collector wouldn't even lift his eyes to look toward heaven. Rather, he struck his chest and said, "God, show mercy to me, a sinner." I tell you, this person went down to his home justified rather than the Pharisee. All who lift themselves up will be brought low, and those who make themselves low will be lifted up. People were bringing babies to Jesus so that he would bless them. When the disciples saw this, they scolded them. Then Jesus called them to him and said, "Allow the children to come to me. Don't forbid them, because God's kingdom belongs to people like these children. I assure you that anyone who doesn't welcome God's kingdom like a child will never enter it." A certain ruler asked Jesus, "Good teacher, what must I do to obtain eternal life?" Jesus replied, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except the one God. You know the commandments. Don't commit adultery. Don't murder. Don't steal. Don't give false testimony. Honor your father and mother." Then the ruler said, "I've kept all these things since I was a boy." When Jesus heard this, he said, "There's one more thing. Sell everything you own and distribute the money to the poor. Then you will have treasure in heaven, and come follow me." When he heard these words, the man became sad because he was extremely rich. When Jesus saw this, he said, "It's very hard for the wealthy to enter God's kingdom. It's easier for a camel to squeeze through the eye of a needle than for a rich person to enter God's kingdom." Those who heard this said, "Then who can be saved?" Jesus replied, "What is impossible for humans is possible for God." Peter said, "Look, we left everything we owned and followed you." Jesus said to them, "I assure you that anyone who has left house, husband, wife, brothers, sisters, parents, or children because of God's kingdom will receive many times more in this age and eternal life in the coming age." At that time, Jesus took his disciples aside. He said, "Look, we're going up to Jerusalem, and everything written about the human one by the prophets will be fulfilled. He will be handed over to the Gentiles. He will be ridiculed, mistreated, and spit on. After torturing him they will kill him. On the third day he will rise up. But the 12 understood none of these words. The meaning of this message was hidden from them, and they couldn't grasp what he was saying. On the way to Jesus was going to Jericho. On the way to Jericho, gosh, I gotta just check this. As Jesus came to Jericho, I bet that's it. As Jesus came to Jericho. As Jesus came to Jericho, a certain blind man was sitting beside the road begging. When he heard the crowd passing by, he asked what was happening. They told him, Jesus the Nazarene is passing by. The blind man shouted, Jesus, Son of David, show me mercy. Those leading the procession scolded him, telling him to be quiet. But he shouted even louder, Son of David, show me mercy. Jesus stopped and called for the blind man to be brought to him. When he was present, Jesus asked him, what do you want me to do for you? The blind man said, Lord, I want to see. Jesus said to him, receive your sight, your faith has healed you. At once he was able to see, and he began to follow Jesus, praising God. When all the people saw this, they praised God too. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through town. A certain man there named Zacchaeus, a ruler among tax collectors, was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but being a short man, he couldn't because of the crowd, so he ran up ahead and climbed up a sycamore tree so that he could see Jesus, who was about to pass that way. When Jesus came to that spot, he looked up and said, Zacchaeus, come down at once. I must stay in your home today. So Zacchaeus came down at once, happy to welcome Jesus. Everyone who saw this grumbled, saying, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. Zacchaeus stopped and said to the Lord, look, Lord, I give half of my possessions to the poor, and if I have cheated anyone out of anything, I repay them 4 times as much. Jesus said to him, today salvation has come to this household, because he too is a son of Abraham. The human one came to seek and save the lost. As they listened to this, Jesus told them another parable, because he was near Jerusalem and they thought God's kingdom would appear right away. He said to them, a certain man who was born into royalty went to a distant land to receive his kingdom and then return. He called together 10 servants and gave each of them money worth 4 months' wages. He said, do business with this until I return. His citizens hated him, so they sent a representative after him who said, we don't want this man to be our king. After receiving his kingdom, he returned and called the servants to whom he had given the money to find out how much they had earned. The first servant came forward and said, your money has earned a return of 1,000%. The king replied, excellent, you are a good servant. Because you were faithful in a small matter, you will have authority over 10 cities. The second servant came and said, Master, your money has made a return of 500%. To this one, the king said, you will have authority over 5 cities. Another servant came and said, Master, here is your money. I wrapped it up in a scarf for safekeeping. I was afraid of you, because you are a stern man. You withdraw what you didn't deposit, and you harvest what you didn't plant. Actually, you withdraw what you haven't deposited, and you harvest what you haven't planted. The king replied, I will judge you by the words of your own mouth, you worthless servant. You know, did you, that I'm a stern man, withdrawing what I didn't deposit and harvesting what I didn't plant? Why then didn't you put my money in the bank? Then when I arrived, at least I could have gotten it back with interest. He said to his attendants, take his money and give it to the one who has 10 times as much. But master, they said, he already has 10 times as much. The king replied, I say to you that everyone who has will be given more, but from those who don't have, even what they have will be taken away. As for my enemies who don't want me as their king, bring them here and slaughter them before me. After Jesus said this, he continued on ahead, going up to Jerusalem. As Jesus approached Bethpage and Bethany near the Mount of Olives, he gave 2 disciples a task. He said, "Go into the village over there. When you enter it, you will find tied up there a colt that no one has ever ridden. Untie it and bring it here. If someone asks, 'Why are you untying the colt?' just say, 'Its master needs it.'" Those who had been sent found it exactly as Jesus had said. As they were untying the colt, its owner said to them, "Why are you untying the colt?" They replied, "Its master needs it." They brought it to Jesus, threw their clothes on the colt, and lifted Jesus onto it. As Jesus rode along, they spread their clothes on the road. As Jesus approached the road leading down from the Mount of Olives, the whole throng of his disciples began rejoicing. They praised God in a loud voice because of all the mighty things they had seen. They said, "Blessings on the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest heavens." Some of the Pharisees from the crowd said to Jesus, "Teacher, scold your disciples. Tell them to stop." He answered, "I tell you, if they were silent, the stones would shout." As Jesus came to the city and observed it, he wept over it. He said, "If only you knew on this of all days the things that lead to peace, but now they're hidden from your eyes. The time will come when your enemies will build fortifications around you, encircle you, and attack you from all sides. They will crush you completely, you and the people within you. They won't leave one stone on top of another within you because you didn't recognize the time of your gracious visit from God." When Jesus entered the temple, he threw out those who were selling things there. He said to them, "It's written, 'My house will be a house of prayer,' but you have made it a hideout for crooks." Jesus was teaching daily in the temple. The chief priests, the legal experts, and the foremost leaders among the people were seeking to kill him. However, they couldn't find a way to do it because all the people were enthralled with what they heard. On one of the days when Jesus was teaching the people in the temple and proclaiming the good news, the chief priests, legal experts, and elders approached him. They said, "Tell us, what kind of authority do you have for doing these things? Who gave you this authority?" He replied, "I have a question for you. Tell me, was John's baptism of heavenly or of human origin?" They discussed among themselves, "If we say it's of heavenly origin," he'll say, "Why didn't you believe him? But if we say it's of human origin, then all the people will stone us to death because they're convinced that John was a prophet." They answered that they didn't know where it came from. Then Jesus replied, "Neither will I tell you what kind of authority I have for doing these things." Jesus told the people this parable. A certain man planted a vineyard, rented it out to tenant farmers, and went on a trip for a long time. When it was time, he sent a servant to collect from the tenants his share of the fruit of the vineyard. But the tenants sent him away beaten and empty-handed. The man sent a second servant, but they beat him, treated him disgracefully, and sent him away empty-handed as well. He sent a third servant. They wounded this servant and threw him out. The owner of the vineyard said, What should I do?" "I'll send my son, whom I love dearly. Perhaps they will respect him." But when they saw him, the tenants said to each other, "This is the heir. Let's kill him so the inheritance will be ours." They threw him out of the vineyard and killed him. What will the owner of the vineyard do to them? He will come and destroy those tenants and give the vineyard to others. When the people heard this, they said, "May this never happen." Staring at them, Jesus said, "Then what is the meaning of this text of Scripture? The stone that the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. Everyone who falls on that stone will be crushed, and the stone will crush the person it falls on." The legal experts and chief priests wanted to arrest him right then because they knew he had told the parable against them, but they feared the people. The legal experts and chief priests sent spies who pretended to be sincere. They wanted to trap him in his words so they could hand him over to the jurisdiction and authority of the governor. They asked him, Teacher, we know that you are correct in what you say and teach. You don't show favoritism, but teach God's way as it really is. Tell us, does the law allow people to pay taxes to Caesar or not? Since Jesus recognized their deception, he said to them, Show me a coin. Whose image and inscription does it have on it? They said, Caesar's. He said to them, Give to Caesar what belongs to Caesar, and to God what belongs to God. They couldn't trap him by his words in front of the people. Astonished by his answer, they were speechless. Some Sadducees who deny that there's a resurrection came to Jesus and asked, Teacher, Moses wrote for us that if a man's brother dies, leaving a widow but no children, the man must marry the widow and raise up children for his brother. Now there were 7 brothers. The first man married a widow and died childless. The second, and then the third brother married her. Eventually, all 7 married her, and they all died without leaving any children. Finally, the woman died too. In the resurrection, whose wife will she be? All 7 were married to her. Jesus said to them, People who belong to this age marry and are given in marriage, but those who are considered worthy to participate in that age, that is, in the age of the resurrection of the dead, won't marry nor be given in marriage, because they can no longer die, for they are God's for they are like the angels and are God's children, since they belong to the resurrection. Hold on. However? Is it however? Since they belong to the resurrection. Oh, I'm too far here. Since they belong to the resurrection. Since they share in the resurrection, they can no longer die because they are like the angels and are God's children. No, because they can no longer die because they are like the angels and are God's children, since they share in the resurrection. Even Moses demonstrates that the dead are raised. In the passage about the bush, when he speaks of the Lord as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, he is not the God of the dead, but of the living. For to him they're all alive. Some of the legal experts responded, Teacher, you have answered well. No one dared ask him anything else. Jesus said to them, Why do they say that the Christ is David's son? David himself says in the scroll of the Psalms, The Lord said to my Lord, Sit at my right side until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet. Since David calls him Lord, how can he be David's son? In the presence of all the people, Jesus began to speak first to his disciples. Watch out for the legal experts. They like to walk around in long robes. They love being greeted with honor in the markets. They long for the places of honor in the synagogues and at banquets. They cheat widows out of their homes, and to show off they say long prayers. They will be judged most harshly. Looking up, Jesus saw rich people throwing their gifts into the collection box from the temple treasury. He also saw a poor widow throwing 2 small copper coins worth a penny. He said, I assure you that this poor widow has put in more than them all. All of them are giving out of their spare change, but she, from her hopeless poverty, has put in everything she had to live on. Some people were talking about the temple, how it was decorated with beautiful stones and ornaments dedicated to God. Jesus said, As for the things you're admiring, the time will come when not even one stone will be left upon another. All will be demolished. They asked him, Teacher, when will these things happen? What sign will show that these things are about to happen? He said to them, he said, "Watch out that you aren't deceived. Many will come in my name, saying, 'I'm the one, and it's time.' Don't follow them. When you hear of wars and rebellions, don't be alarmed. When you hear of wars and rebellions, don't be alarmed. All these things must happen first, but the end won't happen immediately." Then Jesus said to them, "Nations and kingdoms will fight against each other. There will be great earthquakes and wide-scale food shortages and epidemics. There will also be terrifying sights and great signs in the sky. But before all this occurs, they will take you into custody and harass you because of your faith. You'll be brought before kings and governors. You'll be brought before kings and governors and... gotta just see what that says. You'll be brought before kings and governors. Nope. They'll hand you over to synagogues and prisons, and you'll be brought before kings and governors because of my name. This will provide you with an opportunity to testify. Make up your minds not to prepare your defense in advance. I'll give you words and wisdom that none of your opponents will be able to counter or contradict. You'll be betrayed by your parents, brothers and sisters, relatives and friends. Everyone will hate you because of my name. They will execute some of you. Everyone will hate you because of my name. Still, not a hair on your heads will be lost. By holding fast, you will gain your lives. When you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, then you'll know that its destruction is close at hand. At that time, those in Judea must flee to the mountains, those in the city must escape, and those in the countryside must not enter the city. These are the days of punishment when everything written will find its fulfillment. How terrible it will be at that time for women who are pregnant or for women who are nursing their children. There will be great agony on the earth and angry judgment on this people. They will fall by the edge of the sword and be taken away as captives among all nations. Am I missing something? Jerusalem will be plundered by Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are completed. Oh, I'm an Acts there. I need to be in the right book. Yep, I got it. Okay, let's see if I need to just check myself on this part. Until the times of the Gentiles are concluded. Till the times of the Gentiles are concluded. There will be signs in the sun, moon, and stars. On the earth there will be dismay among nations and their confusion over the roaring of the water and surging waves. The planets and other heavenly bodies will be shaken, causing people to faint from fear and foreboding of what is coming upon the earth. Then they will see the human one coming on a cloud with power and great splendor. Now when these things begin to happen, stand up straight and raise your heads because your redemption is near. Jesus told this parable, look at the fig tree and all the trees. When they sprout leaves, you can see for yourselves and know that summer is near. In the same way, when you see these things happening, you know that God's kingdom is near. I assure you that this generation won't pass away until everything has happened. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will certainly not pass away. But my words will certainly not pass away. Take care that your hearts aren't dulled by drinking parties, drunkenness, and the anxieties of day-to-day life. Don't let that day fall upon you unexpectedly like a trap. It will come upon everyone who lives on the face of the whole earth. Stay alert at all times, praying that you're strong enough to escape everything that is about to happen and to stand before the human one. Jesus was teaching every day in the temple, but he would spend each night on the Mount of Olives. All the people rose early in the morning to hear him in the temple area.